The Soul Pride returned to Earth 3 months after leaving. Vorthak Space Captain Lee Min-soo carried with him complete intelligence about Vorthak military capabilities, territorial holdings, and command structures. The data went directly to Earth Defense Command, where Admiral Cho Hyun-woo began planning humanity's next phase of operations. Earth had been preparing for this moment since the first probe detected Vorthak activities. The shipyards that had been building exploration vessels quietly retooled for military production. Human engineering teams worked around the clock designing weapon systems that could challenge galactic powers. Admiral Cho stood in the main command center watching construction reports scroll across multiple displays. Humanity had learned long ago that peace could only be maintained through superior firepower. The galaxy was about to receive a practical demonstration of human military doctrine. The intelligence reports from Captain Lee's team painted a clear picture of Vorthak Empire structure. They ruled through terror and intimidation, crushing any species that showed resistance. Their military forces were concentrated in key strategic locations, leaving vast areas of space under minimal guard. Most importantly, the Empire had made enemies of every species they had conquered. Slave populations across 47 star systems were waiting for any chance to rebel against their Vorthak masters. The humans would not have to fight alone when the time came for action. Dr. Park Soo-jin had returned to Earth with detailed biological data about Vorthak physiology and psychology. Her analysis showed that the Empire warriors were dangerous but predictable. They relied on brute force and intimidation rather than adaptable tactics. This would be their weakness. Colonel Kim Jae-in provided comprehensive assessments of Vorthak weapons and defensive systems. Human technology was different but not necessarily inferior. The key advantage would come from superior training and tactical flexibility rather than raw firepower. Sergeant Yoon Hae-ji had become something of a legend among Earth military forces. Her combat performance at Blood Moon Base demonstrated that humans could match or exceed Vorthak warriors. In personal combat training programs across Earth incorporated her techniques and observations. 3 weeks after the Soul Pride returned, Admiral Cho received authorization to begin Operation Righteous Fury. The first target would be Vorthak Forward Base Gamma, where 3,000 warriors guarded enslaved populations from 12 conquered worlds. The human fleet that departed Earth was smaller than most observers expected. 20 ships carrying Marine Colonel Oh In-soo and 2,000 human soldiers. The vessels looked elegant and peaceful compared to the brutal angular designs favored by Vorthak engineers, but appearances were deceiving. Human ship design prioritized function over intimidation. The sleek hulls contained advanced weapons systems and defensive technologies that had been tested in Earth's most demanding environments. Every system was built to exceed specifications because human engineers assumed everything would try to kill them. Colonel Oh In-soo had volunteered for this mission after reviewing the intelligence reports about Vorthak treatment of conquered populations. His grandmother had survived similar conditions during Earth's last global war, and he understood what freedom meant to enslaved people. The human fleet approached Vorthak Forward Base Gamma using standard diplomatic protocols. They transmitted peaceful intentions and requested permission to dock for cultural exchange meetings. The base commander followed established procedures and allowed them to approach. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations. The human ships disabled the base defense systems in the first 30 seconds using electronic warfare techniques that bypassed Vorthak security protocols. The alien warriors found their weapons offline, their communications jammed, and their life support systems under human control. Colonel Oh forces landed simultaneously at 17 strategic locations across the base complex. The assault was coordinated with precision that impressed even veteran Vorthak tacticians. Every key facility was captured before defenders could mount organized resistance. The fighting that followed was brief and decisive. Human soldiers moved through the base like they had studied the blueprints for months. They knew exactly where to find command centers, weapon storage areas, and prisoner holding facilities. Their tactics adapted constantly to changing conditions. Vorthak warriors discovered that their superior size and strength meant nothing against enemies who fought smarter. Human soldiers used the base's own infrastructure against its defenders. Gravity manipulation systems became weapons Environmental controls became tools of psychological warfare. Within 4 hours, Vorthok forward base Gamma was completely under human control. Not a single human soldier had been killed, though several reported minor injuries from falling equipment during boarding actions. The 3,000 Vorthok warriors were either dead or captured. The enslaved populations found themselves free for the first time in decades. Human medical teams immediately began treating injuries and providing emergency supplies. Colonel O personally visited each species group to explain what was happening and what would happen next. The liberated aliens could barely comprehend their situation. Some had been slaves for so long they had forgotten what freedom meant. Others wept openly when they realized the Vorthok would never. The defeat at Razor Peak sent shockwaves through Vorthok High Command. Supreme War Leader Thrakesol ordered immediate investigation into human capabilities. The Empire's best scientists and intelligence officers began analyzing all available data about Earth and its inhabitants. What they discovered changed everything. Dr. Velthan was the Empire leading xenobiologist who had studied hundreds of alien species during the conquest campaigns. She received priority access to all human cultural data, biological samples, and technological information. The analysis took 3 weeks to complete. When she finished her report, every leader in the Empire read it with growing horror. Earth was not just another inhabited planet, it was the ultimate death world. The gravity readings showed crushing force that would flatten most galactic species. The atmospheric composition included oxygen at concentrations that were literally explosive to many life forms. The weather patterns demonstrated violence beyond anything in the known galaxy. Hurricanes with wind speeds that could destroy cities. Tornadoes that appeared without warning and leveled everything in their path. Earthquakes that split continents apart. Volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun for years. Lightning storms that could power entire civilizations if harnessed properly. But the weather was nothing compared to the life forms. Earth harbored millions of species that existed only to kill and consume each other. Massive predators that hunted in coordinated packs. Tiny organisms that could dissolve living tissue in seconds. Plants that actively hunted and digested animals. Microscopic life that could destroy entire ecosystems. The oceans contained creatures larger than Vorthok. Warships with tentacles that could crush starship hulls. Poisonous fish that could kill with a single bite. Jellyfish whose stings caused excruciating death. Electric rays that could stun creatures 10 times their size on land. The dangers multiplied. Cats that could leap 40 feet and crush skulls with their jaws. Bears that stood 12 feet tall and fought for territory like Vorthok warriors. Insects that swarmed in millions and devoured everything organic. Snakes whose venom could kill in minutes. The plant life was equally hostile. Trees that could live for thousands of years, growing to impossible heights. Vines that strangled other plants to reach sunlight. Flowers that released toxic compounds to kill competing species. Fungi that dissolved dead matter and recycled it into soil. But none of this prepared the Vorthok scientists for the truth about humanity itself. Humans had not just survived on this nightmare planet, they had conquered it completely. They had driven countless species to extinction, reshaped entire continents, and turned the planet resources into weapons of incredible destruction. Their cities covered vast areas and their population numbered in the billions. The historical data was even more terrifying. Human civilization was built on endless warfare. Every generation had developed more efficient ways to kill their own species. They had created weapons that could destroy entire cities, poison gases that killed everything that breathed, diseases that spread like wildfire through populations. Their wars had consumed entire continents and lasted for decades. Millions of humans died in single battles, yet they continued fighting for abstract concepts like freedom, honor, and justice. They would sacrifice themselves for complete strangers and fight hopeless battles rather than surrender. The cultural analysis revealed psychology unlike anything in the known galaxy. Humans created art that celebrated death and glory, music that stirred warriors, to suicidal courage stories that turned military defeats into spiritual victories. They worshipped concepts like sacrifice, duty, and vengeance. Dr. Velthan report included recordings of human entertainment media. The Empire analysts watched in stunned silence as humans consumed fictional stories about their own species fighting against impossible odds. Their heroes were individuals who died protecting others or who refused to surrender despite certain death. The sports and recreational activities showed the same patterns. Humans engaged in activities that risked serious injury or death for entertainment value. They climbed impossible mountains, dove into crushing ocean depths, and threw themselves from aircraft with only fabric to slow their fall. Their children played games that simulated warfare and competition. Physical education included combat training and survival skills. Human schools taught young people to fight, overcome obstacles, and never give up regardless of the odds against them. The technological assessment was equally disturbing. Human engineering was built around the assumption that everything would try to kill you. Their vehicles were designed to survive crashes that would destroy most alien transport. Their buildings could withstand earthquakes, hurricanes, and military bombardment. Human medical science focused on repairing damage that would be fatal to other species. They routinely survived injuries that would kill. Vorthic warriors, they had developed surgical techniques to replace damaged organs, repair broken bones, and heal tissue damage that should have been impossible to survive. Most disturbing was their space technology. Human ships were built like weapons. Even when designed for exploration, they carried enough firepower to level cities and armor thick enough to survive direct hits from military weapons. Their crews trained for combat operations as standard procedure. When Dr. Velthan finished her presentation, the command chamber fell completely silent. Supreme War Leader Thraksil stared at the data display showing Earth location and human population estimates. The implications were too large to process immediately. We are not the apex predators. Thraksil finally spoke. The words came out as a whisper, but every leader in the room heard them clearly. We never were. The Vorthek Empire had built its power on being the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Their warriors were stronger, faster, and more aggressive than any known aliens. Their weapons were more advanced, their ships were more powerful, and their tactics were more brutal. But humans came from a world where the Vorthek would be considered just another predator species among millions. They had evolved not just to survive, but to dominate a planet that made Vorthek Prime look like a vacation resort. Their entire civilization was built around the concept of overcoming impossible odds. Commander Vextar stepped forward. Supreme War Leader, what are your orders? Thraksil continued. Staring at the star charts showing Earth location, the yellow sun seemed so small and insignificant, yet it harbored the most dangerous creatures the galaxy had ever produced. A species that had conquered their own death world and was now looking toward the stars. Cancel all expansion operations in human space, he ordered immediately. No Vorthak forces are to approach Earth or engage human vessels without direct authorization from this command. The humans are not prey species. The other commanders exchanged worried glances. This was the first time in Empire history that Thraksil had ordered retreat from any alien contact. The admission of human superiority went against everything the Vorthak believed about themselves. What about our current operations? Commander Thexmore asked quietly. His encounter with the humans at Nexus Station seemed very different now that he understood what they really were. All operations continue as planned, Thraksil replied, but we monitor human activities very carefully. They seem interested in diplomatic contact, but we do not know their true intentions. Dr. Velthan cleared her throat. Supreme War Leader, the humans have been gathering detailed intelligence about our military capabilities and territorial holdings. They know exactly where our major installations are located and how our command structure operates. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Every leader understood the implications. The humans were not naive aliens seeking peaceful contact. They were apex predators conducting reconnaissance before making their next move. How long before they decide we are a threat that needs to be eliminated? Thraksil asked. Dr. Velthan consulted her reports. Based on human historical patterns, they will attempt diplomatic solutions first, but if they conclude that the Vorthek Empire represents a danger to galactic peace, they will take action to eliminate that threat, and we cannot stop them. The silence that followed answered his question better than words. The Vorthek Empire, which had seemed invincible just weeks before, now faced an enemy they could not defeat. The apex predators had met something even more deadly. News about the strange humans traveled quickly through Vorthek military networks. Elite Commander Vextar heard about Sergeant Yoon defeating 3 warriors and refused to believe the reports his battle group had conquered 18 star systems. Without losing a single engagement, no primitive species could challenge Vorthok. Supermissive X-Star commanded the Crimson Fang Legion, which specialized in shock assault tactics. They were the Empire's most feared unit sent to crush resistance movements and break rebellious populations. His warriors had never met enemies they could not destroy through superior firepower and brutal efficiency. When he learned the humans were still in Vorthok space, Vexstar decided to test them personally. He sent a formal challenge to Captain Lee Min-soo requesting war games between their forces. The commander wanted to demonstrate proper Vorthok military superiority and end these ridiculous rumors about human combat skills. Captain Lee accepted the challenge. With polite enthusiasm, the human diplomat seemed genuinely excited about the opportunity to observe Vorthok tactical methods in action. He requested permission to select a small team from his crew for the exercise. Of X-Star expected the humans to field their full complement of 30 personnel instead. Captain Lee chose only 10 individuals for the war games. This included Dr. Park Soo-jin, whose scientific background seemed completely unsuitable for military operations. The selection confirmed Vexstar's opinion that humans were naive about warfare. The exercise location was Razor Pika Jungle Training Facility on the 4th moon of Vorthok Prime. The environment combined deadly flora and fauna with treacherous terrain that had killed hundreds of recruits during regular training cycles. Everything on this moon had evolved to be either poisonous, predatory, or both carnivorous. Plants grew in thick tangles that could dissolve organic matter in minutes. Acid-spitting insects swarmed in clouds that stripped flesh from bones. Flying reptiles hunted in coordinated packs using sonic attacks to disorient prey. The ground itself was unstable with hidden sinkholes and explosive gas pockets. Vexstar deployed 50 of his best warriors for the exercise. His troops knew this terrain intimately and had trained here for years. They would use standard pack hunting tactics, surrounding the humans and forcing them into prepared kill zones. The exercise should end within 2 hours. Both sides received simulation weapons that would register hits without causing actual injury. The humans carried basic rifles and sidearms, while the Vorthok warriors used their preferred combination of ranged weapons and melee implements. Victory conditions required complete elimination of the opposing force. When the exercise began, Vexstar's confidence was absolute. His warriors moved through the hostile jungle like they owned it. Each fighter knew exactly where to step to avoid dangerous plants and how to recognize the warning signs of predatory creatures. The Vorthok formation spread out to encircle the human position. The humans had landed in a small clearing surrounded by dense vegetation. Vexstar tactical display showed their location as a red dot on his command screen. His warriors were closing in from all directions, using stealth techniques that had proven effective against dozens of enemy species. Then, something impossible happened on his tracking display. A red dot representing human forces suddenly split into multiple smaller signals moving in different directions. The humans were not staying in their landing zone or trying to establish a defensive perimeter. Instead, they were dispersing into the jungle using movement patterns that made no tactical sense. Of X-Star tried to track individual human signatures, but they kept disappearing from his sensors. The jungle interference was heavier than usual, and his equipment seemed to be malfunctioning. Human signals would appear briefly, then vanish completely, as if they had learned to hide from Vorthok detection systems. His warriors began reporting strange contacts. Enemy forces were appearing behind their positions, then disappearing before engagement. The humans seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time, moving through terrain that should have been impossible to navigate. The first casualties came as a complete shock. Delta Squad reported enemy contact, then went silent. Their life signs showed unconscious but not dead. 3 elite Vorthok warriors had been eliminated by enemies they never saw. The attackers had used the jungle environment to approach undetected and strike with surgical precision. Vexstar ordered his remaining forces to close ranks and advance more carefully. His warriors were professionals who adapted quickly to changing tactical situations. They began moving in tighter formations with overlapping fields of fire and constant communication, but the humans had already demonstrated they could move through this death world like they belong there. Dr. Park Sujin used her scientific knowledge to predict creature behavior and environmental hazards. She guided her team through paths that avoided both natural dangers and Vorthek patrol. Roots Sergeant Yoon led the combat elements using infiltration techniques that seemed impossible in the heavy jungle conditions. She moved without sound through vegetation that should have betrayed any movement her team struck from unexpected. Angles then vanished before counterattacks could develop. The humans were not just fighting, they were hunting. They used psychological warfare that confused and demoralized. Vorthek warriors' strange sounds echoed through the jungle that might have been communication signals or might have been predator calls. False retreats drew pursuit forces into carefully prepared ambush sites. Most disturbing was the obvious enjoyment the humans showed during combat. Their radio chatter included casual conversation and occasional laughter as if they were playing an entertaining game rather than fighting for their lives. This behavior was completely alien to Vorthek military doctrine. Captain Lee coordinated the overall strategy from a mobile command post that somehow stayed ahead of pursuing forces. His tactical decisions showed deep understanding of both terrain advantages and Vorthek psychological weaknesses. The human commander seemed to anticipate enemy movements before they were made. By the fourth hour of the exercise, Vextar had lost 37 of his 50 warriors. The humans had eliminated nearly his entire force without suffering a single casualty. In return, his remaining troops were demoralized and confused, unable to adapt to enemy tactics that defied all logical expectations. The final engagement occurred when Vextar personally led his last squad in a desperate assault on the human command position. They found Captain Lee waiting calmly in a small clearing with Sergeant Yoon and 2 other team members. The Vorthek warriors charged with everything they had left, using their most aggressive close combat techniques. Vextar himself wielded his ceremonial warblade, expecting to finally demonstrate Vorthek's superiority. Through personal combat prowess, the fight lasted less than 3 minutes. Sergeant Yoon moved through the attacking warriors like death personified. She disabled each opponent with movements so fast and precise they barely registered on the combat sensors. Her teammates provided covering fire and tactical support, but she clearly needed no assistance. When the simulation ended, Vextar found himself flat on his back with a human weapon pointed at his throat. 47 of his best warriors had been eliminated by 10 humans who had never fought on this terrain before. The impossible had become reality. Captain Lee helped him stand and thanked him for the excellent training exercise. The human commander complimented Vextar tactical planning and warrior discipline as if discussing a friendly sporting event rather than a devastating military defeat. Dr. Park Sujin approached with her scientific equipment and asked permission to study the local ecosystem further. She seemed more interested in cataloging poisonous plants than celebrating their victory over elite Vorthek forces. This casual attitude was perhaps more unsettling than their combat performance. As the humans prepared to leave Razor Peak, Vextar stood among his defeated warriors, trying to understand what had happened. His legion had conquered star systems and broken alien armies, but they had been completely outmatched by a tiny human force. The war games had revealed a terrifying truth. These humans were not primitive aliens learning about galactic civilization. They were apex predators from a world that made Vorthek Prime look like a peaceful garden. When Vextar reported the results to High Command, many officers refused to believe his account. The idea that any species could defeat Vorthek warriors so completely seemed impossible, but the exercise data could not be disputed or explained away. The humans had demonstrated capabilities that challenged the Empire's fundamental assumptions about galactic power structures. Something was deeply wrong with their understanding of the universe and humanity's place within it. The human ship Soul Pride entered Vorthek space 2 weeks later. Captain Lee Min-soo commanded a crew of 30 carefully selected individuals. Dr. Park Sujin brought her scientific equipment and research team. Colonel Kim Jae-in officially served as military advisor, but his real job was intelligence gathering. The ship also carried Marine Sergeant Yoon Hyeji, whose presence was listed as security liaison in the diplomatic documents. Her actual mission was to assess Vorthek combat capabilities and find weaknesses in their military training. The young woman had volunteered for this assignment despite knowing the extreme risks Involved Commander Thexmore met them at Blood Moon Base, his most intimidating military installation. The facility was built on Vorthek Tertius, a planet that served as the final training ground for elite warriors. The world itself was a weapon designed to kill anything weak enough to die there. Gravity on Vorthek Tertius was twice Earth normal, which crushed most alien visitors within hours. The atmosphere contained sulfur compounds that burned unprotected lungs and corroded metal equipment. Predatory creatures roamed freely through the base perimeter, hunting anything that moved. The temperature fluctuated between freezing cold and burning hot every few hours. Previous diplomatic visitors had required full environmental suits and medical support just to survive their brief stays. Most lasted only a day or two before begging to return to their ships. The Vorthak used this location specifically to demonstrate their superiority over weaker species. When the human shuttle landed at Blood Moon Base, Thexmore expected to see aliens struggling with basic survival. Instead, Captain Lee Min-soo stepped out. Wearing only a light jacket over his standard uniform, he breathed the toxic air normally and showed no signs of distress from the crushing gravity. Dr. Park Soo-jin emerged next, carrying her scientific equipment. She immediately began taking atmospheric readings and soil samples. Her movements were steady and coordinated despite the heavy gravitational pull. She seemed more interested in the hostile environment than bothered by it. Colonel Kim Jae-in surveyed the military installations with professional interest. He walked around the landing area, studying defensive positions and weapon placements. The double gravity made him move more slowly, but he adapted quickly to the challenging conditions. Sergeant Yoon Hae-ji was the most surprising arrival. She stepped off the shuttle and immediately began doing stretching exercises. As if preparing for physical training, the young woman appeared completely comfortable in the deadly environment that had killed dozens of alien diplomats. Commander Thexmore welcomed them personally, expecting to see obvious signs of struggle or fear. Instead, the humans thanked him politely for the invitation and expressed enthusiasm about learning Vorthak culture. Captain Lee mentioned that the environmental conditions reminded him of certain regions on Earth. That first day, the humans settled into their assigned quarters without complaint. The building had no environmental controls because Vorthak warriors did not need artificial comfort. The temperature dropped to -30 degrees during the night cycle. Most alien visitors huddled inside emergency shelters. The next morning, Thexmore found Captain Lee jogging around the base perimeter. He was running at a steady pace through the heavy gravity, breathing the caustic air without protection. The humans seemed to be enjoying the exercise rather than enduring it as a survival necessity. Dr. Park spent her time studying the local ecosystem. She collected samples of plants and insects that were toxic to most known life forms. The human scientist handled these dangerous specimens with her bare hands, showing no concern about poison or acid burns. Her enthusiasm for deadly creatures puzzled the Vorthak guards. Colonel Kim requested tours of the training facilities and weapons testing ranges. He asked detailed questions about Vorthak military doctrine and battlefield tactics. His professional knowledge impressed the instructors, who had expected ignorant questions from a primitive species. But Sergeant Yoon created the biggest surprise. She approached the Vorthak combat instructors and asked permission to observe their training sessions. The young woman claimed she wanted to learn about alien fighting techniques for academic purposes. The Vorthak trainers agreed, thinking it would be amusing to watch a small human female struggle with their brutal combat methods. The training area was a circular pit surrounded by spectator platforms. Warriors fought with bladed weapons while avoiding mechanical hazards that could crush or slice careless fighters. Sergeant Yoon watched several matches with intense concentration. She took notes about fighting stances, weapon techniques, and tactical patterns. The Vorthak warriors performed impressive displays of strength and aggression that had intimidated observers from dozens of species. After 2 hours of observation, Sergeant Yoon made an unexpected request. She asked if she could participate in a training match. The request caused laughter among the Vorthak instructors. They had never seen such a ridiculous suggestion from a diplomatic visitor. The head instructor, Scar Master Vexka, decided to grant her request as entertainment value. He selected 3 junior warriors who would provide a safe demonstration without seriously injuring the fragile human female. The match would last until she yielded or was knocked unconscious. Sergeant Yoon entered the training pit wearing her standard military uniform. She carried no weapons and requested none. The three Vorthok warriors each stood a foot taller than her and outweighed her by at least 100 pounds. Their red scales provided natural armor against most attacks. When the match began, the Vorthok warriors moved with practiced coordination. They had trained together for years and knew each other's fighting styles perfectly. Their strategy was simple: surround the human and force a quick surrender through overwhelming physical presence. What happened next shocked every observer in the facility. Sergeant Yoon moved like liquid mercury, flowing between attacks that should have connected. She used the warriors' own momentum against them, redirecting their strikes into each other while maintaining perfect balance in the heavy gravity. Her counterattacks were precise and devastating. She targeted nerve clusters and joint weaknesses with surgical accuracy. Each strike disabled specific muscle groups without causing permanent injury. The Vorthok warriors found themselves unable to coordinate their movements properly. Within 10 minutes, all three opponents were on the ground, struggling to stand. Sergeant Yoon remained in the center of the pit, breathing normally and showing no signs of fatigue. She had defeated 3 elite Vorthok warriors without breaking a sweat. The training facility fell completely silent. Nobody moved or spoke for several long moments. Scarmaster Vexka stared at the impossible scene before him. No alien species had ever demonstrated such combat capability against Vorthok fighter. Sergeant Yoon helped her defeated opponents stand and thanked them politely for the educational experience. She asked if they could schedule additional training sessions because she wanted to learn more about their fighting techniques. The defeated warriors nodded numbly, still trying to understand what had happened. Word of the incident spread throughout Blood Moon Base within hours. Every Vorthok warrior wanted to hear details about the small human female who had accomplished the impossible. Soon they were calling her the Silent Death, though never in her presence. Commander Vexmore received reports about the training incident while reviewing intelligence data about human technology and civilization. The information was deeply disturbing. These creatures were not behaving like any known species pattern. That evening he met privately with Captain Lee to discuss the situation. Your female warrior defeated 3 of our best fighters, Vexmore said carefully. This suggests your species has considerable combat experience. Captain Lee nodded calmly. Sergeant Yoon has trained extensively in multiple martial arts disciplines. Our military personnel study many different fighting systems. We believe diverse knowledge creates more effective soldiers. Vexmore wanted to ask more questions, but something in the human captain's calm demeanor warned him to proceed carefully. These visitors were not helpless prey species as he had initially assumed. They were something else entirely. The humans spent 2 more weeks at Blood Moon Base studying Vorthok culture and military organization. They adapted to the hostile environment better than most Vorthok recruits. The deadly conditions that were supposed to intimidate them instead seemed like mild inconveniences. When they finally departed, Vexmore felt profound unease about the encounter. The humans had been polite, grateful, and educational, but they had also demonstrated capabilities that challenged everything he thought he knew about alien species. Something was very wrong with the galaxy balance of power. The red ships moved like blood drops across the black space. Commander Vexmore stood tall on his command deck, watching the blue planet below him burn. The fires looked beautiful from up here, like tiny orange flowers blooming across the surface. He smiled, showing his sharp white teeth that could tear metal. The Vorthok Empire owned this galaxy now. 47 star systems bowed to their power. Their red-scaled warriors were the strongest fighters anyone had ever seen. They came from Vorthok Prime, where acid rain fell every day and the ground shook with volcano explosions. Every Vorthok child learned to fight before they could walk properly. Today they had conquered the Kaleri homeworld. The blue-skinned aliens had tried to fight back. For 3 days their weapons were weak like toy guns against Vorthok armor. When the plasma cannons started firing, the Kaleri ships melted like ice in fire. Now their cities burned and their people worked as slaves in the mining camps. Vexmore was 7 feet tall with muscles like steel cables. His red scales caught the light from the burning planet below. Each scale was harder than most alien armor. His claws could cut through starship metal. His eyes glowed yellow in the dark like a hunting beast. Other species called the Vorthok the Deathbringers, and they were right. The bridge crew worked quietly around him. They knew better than to make noise when the commander was thinking Vorthak discipline was harsh. A warrior who failed died. A warrior who showed fear died. A warrior who questioned orders definitely died. This made them the best soldiers in the galaxy sub. Commander Kralhen approached carefully. His footsteps made no sound on the metal floor. He stopped exactly 3 steps away and waited. Dexmore did not turn around. He was still watching the planet burn, the orange glow reflected in his yellow eyes. Finally, Dexmore spoke. His voice was deep and rough like grinding stones. The other worlds in this system have surrendered. Commander, the mining operations can begin tomorrow. The Kaleri population will be relocated to work camps as ordered. Good, Dexmore replied. How many survivors? Approximately 4 million, Commander. Most are healthy enough for labor duty. The children will be processed for training programs as per standard protocol. Dexmore nodded. The Vorthak way was simple: conquer everything. Take what you need, kill what resists, use what remains. They had been doing this for 200 years across the galaxy. No species had ever successfully fought back against them. The communication console started beeping. Kralhen moved quickly to check the incoming message. His scales turned a darker red, which meant surprise or concern. Commander, we have an unknown contact at the edge of the system. What kind of contact? Dexmore turned around now. His hunting instincts were awakening. Small vessel. So single ship, unknown design. The computer cannot identify the species. It appears to be some kind of probe or scout ship. Dexmore walked to the main display screen. The image showed a tiny silver ship no bigger than a Vorthak fighter. It looked fragile, like it was made of thin metal. The design was strange, with smooth curves instead of the angular shapes most species used. It had no visible weapons. Where did it come from? Unknown, Commander. It appeared suddenly at jump point 7. The sensors show no other ships in the area. It seems to be alone. Dexmore laughed. The sound echoed through the bridge like breaking glass. Another weak species had found them. This happened sometimes. Small civilizations would send scouts to investigate the red ships. Then they would run home to tell their leaders about the terrible Vorthak Empire. Usually those leaders were smart enough to surrender immediately. Contact the probe, order it to surrender, and prepare for boarding. Dexmore commanded. If they resist, destroy them. Kralhen worked at his console for a few moments. Commander, the alien ship is responding. They are transmitting in basic galactic standard. The message is, we come in peace. We represent Earth and humanity. We wish to talk. Earth. Dexmore had never heard of this planet. Humanity was also unknown to him. The galactic databases contained information about every known species, but these names did not appear anywhere. It must be some remote world that had just discovered space travel. Tell them to surrender or be destroyed, Dexmore ordered. We do not negotiate with unknown species. The alien ship continued transmitting the same message over and over. They seemed to think talking would save them. This was typical behavior from weak species. They always wanted to negotiate when they should be preparing to die. Commander Kralhen said, looking at his instruments. The probe is conducting some kind of scanning operation. It appears to be studying our fleet formation and weapon systems. Dexmore's eyes flared brighter. The aliens were spying on them. This was unacceptable. He had destroyed entire star fleets for less serious offenses. How dare these unknown creatures attempt to gather intelligence on the mighty Vorthak Empire? Charge all weapons, target the probe. Dexmore commanded. When I give the signal, turn it into space dust. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency. Red lights began flashing as the massive plasma cannons powered up. The energy readings climbed higher and higher until they reached maximum charge. One blast from these weapons could destroy a city. The tiny probe would not even leave debris behind. Target locked, Commander Kralhen reported. All weapons ready. Dexmore raised his clawed hand, ready to give the firing order. But then he paused. Something about this situation felt different. Most species either fled in terror or begged for mercy when they encountered Vorthak ships. This probe just continued its peaceful message while calmly scanning their fleet. Maybe these humans would provide useful information before they died. The Vorthak could learn about their technology and the location of their homeworld. Then they could plan a proper invasion to add another species to their slave collection stand. Down weapons, but maintain target lock. Dexmore decided. Let them finish their scanning. We will trace their origin point and discover this Earth they speak of. When we find their homeworld, we will teach them what happens to species who spy on the Vorthak Empire. The probe continued its work for another hour. Its sensors recorded everything about the Crimson Fleet. The weapon configurations, the ship designs, the communication frequencies, the tactical formations. All of this data was being transmitted back toward a distant star system through quantum communication channels. When the scanning was complete, the probe sent one final message: "Thank you for your patience. We look forward to future contact between our peoples." Then it activated its jump drive and disappeared into hyperspace. Thexum smiled his predator smile. These humans had just signed their own death warrant. They thought they were clever, gathering intelligence on Vorthak forces, but they had also revealed their location. Now the Empire would come for them with the full fury of the Crimson Fleet. Crawl in, plot the probe trajectory, and identify its destination. Thexmore commanded. "We have a new world to conquer." As the orders went out, Thexmore returned to watching the burning planet below. Soon there would be another world on fire, another species learning what it meant to resist. The Vorthak Empire. He had no way of knowing that the small probe had been built by creatures from the deadliest world in the galaxy. The Vorthak thought they were apex predators, but they were about to discover what real predators looked like. 3 weeks passed after the probe incident. Commander Thexmore had been studying the star charts, trying to locate this mysterious Earth planet. His intelligence officers had found references to a small yellow star system in the Outer Rim territories. It seemed like an insignificant location, far from any major trade routes or strategic resources. Then the second ship arrived. This vessel was much larger than the probe, but still tiny compared to Vorthak warships. It measured only 300 meters long, with a sleek silver hull that reflected starlight like polished metal. The design was elegant and smooth, without the brutal angular shapes that marked proper war vessels. The ship transmitted a formal diplomatic message requesting a meeting at Nexus Station. This surprised Thexmore. Most species either fled after seeing Vorthak power or immediately offered tribute and surrender. These humans seemed to think they could negotiate as equals. Nexus Station was a neutral trading post built inside a massive asteroid. It served as a meeting place for different species who wanted to conduct business without the risk of territorial disputes. The station had strict rules about weapons and violence. All visitors had to respect the peace accords or face banishment from galactic commerce. Thexmore decided to attend this meeting personally. He wanted to see these humans with his own eyes before deciding how to destroy them. He brought 12 of his largest warriors as a show of force. Each Vorthak soldier stood over 7 feet tall and wore polished red armor that gleamed like fresh blood. Meeting room was circular with a large table in the center. Thexmore arrived first and arranged his warriors around the walls in an intimidating formation. Their presence usually made other species nervous and compliant. Today would be no different. When the humans entered the room, Thexmore felt his first moment of confusion. 3 individuals walked calmly through the door, showing no signs of fear or stress. The lead figure was a human male who appeared to be their commander. He wore a simple blue uniform with small metal insignias on the collar. This was Captain Lee Min-soo, though Thexmore did not know his name. Yet the human stood barely 6 feet tall, with black hair and dark brown eyes. His skin was pale compared to Vorthak scales, but he moved with quiet confidence that seemed unusual for such a small creature. Behind him came Dr. Park Sojin, a human female with longer black hair tied back in a practical style. She carried a small electronic device and kept looking around the room with obvious scientific curiosity. Her eyes showed intelligence and interest rather than the terror most species displayed when meeting Vorthak warriors. The third human was Colonel Kim Jae-in, who wore a different uniform that suggested military service. He remained silent, but his eyes constantly moved, studying the Vorthak soldiers with professional assessment. This behavior puzzled Thexmore. Most prey species either stared in frozen fear or tried not to look at Vorthak warriors at all. Captain Lee Min-soo approached the table and spoke in clear galactic standard. "I am Captain Lee Min-soo, representing Earth and the human species. We appreciate your willingness to meet with us." Commander Thexmore. The human pronunciation of his name was slightly wrong, but understandable. Thexmore had expected groveling or at least obvious nervousness. Instead, this Captain Lee spoke like he was greeting an equal business partner. The casual tone was almost insulting. "I am Commander Thexmore of the Vorthak Empire." Thexmore replied, We have conquered 47 star systems and enslaved hundreds of species. Your little probe was detected spying on our fleet. This is typically considered an act of war. Captain Lee nodded calmly, as if discussing weather conditions. We understand your concern. The probe was conducting standard first contact protocols. Our species always gathers basic information before formal meetings. This helps prevent misunderstandings that could lead to unnecessary conflicts. Dr. Park Sujin stepped forward with her electronic device. Commander Thexmore, could we ask some questions about Vorthak culture and history? We find your species fascinating from an anthropological perspective. Your social structures and military organization show remarkable efficiency. This was completely unexpected. No species had ever called Vorthak culture fascinating. Most aliens either begged for mercy or tried to appear as non-threatening as possible. Dr. Park seemed genuinely interested in learning about them, as if they were subjects for academic study rather than terrifying conquerors. Thexerm decided to test their reactions by describing some recent conquests. The Kaleri homeworld burned for 3 days before they surrendered, he said, watching their faces carefully. We relocated 4 million survivors to labor camps. Their children will be trained as soldiers for our empire. The humans listened politely and took notes. Captain Lee asked practical questions about logistics and administration. Dr. Park inquired about Kaleri biology and how they adapted to different planetary conditions. Colonel Kim remained silent but continued his careful observation of Vorthak military equipment. None of them showed horror, disgust, or fear at the description of genocide and slavery. This was deeply unsettling to Thexmore. His accounts of conquest usually made other species tremble or weep. These humans reacted like he was describing a routine business operation. Tell us about your military structure, Dr. Park said, making notes on her device. How do you maintain discipline across such a large empire? Do you use fear-based hierarchies? Or do you have other motivational systems? Thexmore found himself actually answering her questions. The humans nodded thoughtfully and asked follow-up questions that showed they understood military organization. Very well, Colonel Kim finally spoke, asking about Vorthak combat training methods and battlefield tactics. Captain Lee requested permission to visit Vorthak space for cultural exchange programs. We would like to learn more about your civilization, he said. Our diplomatic protocols require extensive study before formal treaty negotiations can begin. This request was perfect for Thexmore purposes. He could bring the humans to Vorthak territory where he could study them properly before conquest. He agreed to host their delegation at one of the military training facilities. The humans seemed pleased with this arrangement. As the meeting ended, Thexmore felt troubled by the encounter. These humans were unlike any species he had met before. They showed no fear, displayed genuine curiosity about Vorthak culture, and asked intelligent questions about military organization. Most disturbing was their casual reaction to descriptions of war crimes. Captain Lee shook hands with Thexmore using some strange human gesture that involved gripping palms together. The human hand felt warm and surprisingly strong. Dr. Park collected her notes and thanked him for the educational discussion. Colonel Kim nodded respectfully to the Vorthak warriors before following his companions out after the humans left. Thexmore stood in the empty meeting room thinking about what had just happened. His warriors were equally puzzled. They had expected to intimidate weak aliens. Instead, they had met creatures who seemed genuinely interested in learning about Vorthak methods. Sub-Commander Kralhen approached cautiously. Commander, what do you think of these humans? Thexmore was quiet for a long moment. They're either very stupid or very dangerous, he finally said. We will find out which when they visit our territory. The meeting had raised more questions than answers, but Thexmore was confident that once the humans saw true Vorthak power, they would reveal their real nature. Either they would break under pressure like all the others, or they would show their true threat level. Then he could decide whether to enslave them or exterminate them. What Thexmore did not realize was that the humans had been studying him just as carefully as he had been studying them. Captain Lee had noted every detail about Vorthak psychology and leadership patterns. Dr. Park had analyzed their social dynamics and cultural values. Colonel Kim had assessed their military equipment and tactical thinking. The humans left Nexus Station with a complete psychological profile of their enemies. They knew exactly how overconfident and predictable the Vorthak were. The next phase of their plan could now begin.